They kept asking the wrong question. Why didn't you defend yourself? As if silence was the suspicious part, as if the strangest thing in the room was not what they said about you, not how quickly the story spread, not how eager people were to repeat things they never saw, not how nobody called you before deciding what kind of person you were. No. The mystery apparently was you. Why didn't you fight harder? Why didn't you explain? Why didn't you send screenshots? Why didn't you drag every private conversation into the light? Why didn't you correct every person who said your name with that little tone? Why didn't you defend yourself? And then somebody finally gave the answer. Not loudly, not dramatically, just one sentence, because they already knew who would believe them. The room changed. That answer made their story look worse, because now your silence was no longer evidence against you. It became evidence about the room. You were not silent because you had no defense. You were silent because you had already measured the audience. That is different. People love to tell you that the truth should be defended. Sometimes it should, but there are rooms where truth is not being examined, it is being voted on, and you knew the vote was already over. You had seen how it worked. The person with the fastest story became the narrator.
Years, no, you don't understand. One fundraiser with my pals.
The person with the strongest emotion became the victim. The person who arrived first got to label everybody else. And once a group decides what role you play, facts become annoying. You learned that early, not because you were cynical, because you watched. That is what people kept underestimating about you. You watched. You noticed who interrupted you, who only asked questions after they had already reached a conclusion. Who said, "I just want to understand," but got irritated whenever your answer complicated the story. You noticed who wanted evidence and who wanted confirmation. There is a difference. Evidence can change a mind. Confirmation protects one. You knew which one they wanted. So you stopped volunteering material for a trial where the verdict had been written before you entered. That looked like silence. To them, silence looked guilty. To you, it looked efficient, because you had tried defending yourself before. That is the part they forgot. There was a version of you who explained everything, every detail, every misunderstanding, every accusation, every sentence taken out of context. You would sit there and reconstruct the entire event. What happened first? What happened next? Who said what you meant, what you did not mean, why you reacted, why you waited, why you left. You thought if you could make the explanation complete enough, fairness would appear. Cute. You were operating under the assumption that everybody wanted resolution. They did not. Some people wanted a usable story, a story where they did not have to reconsider themselves. A story where the group stayed clean. A story where one person could carry all the tension. And you were convenient. Not because you were weak, because you were capable of carrying more than most people realized.
A guy like me, look, listen. I know why you choose to have your...
You could absorb discomfort without immediately exploding. You could sit in a room where everybody had the wrong idea and still behave normally. That made people reckless. They mistook endurance for permission. They thought, if this were really unfair, surely you would do something. You did. You left. That was the thing they did not understand. They were waiting for a courtroom defense. You gave them an exit. and exits confuse people who need arguments. An argument still keeps both people in the room. An explanation still treats the relationship as salvageable. A defense still says, your opinion of me matters enough for me to fight for it. You eventually stopped saying that. Not because your name stopped mattering to you, because you stopped confusing your name with their version of it. That distinction changed everything. Your name existed before their story. It existed outside their group chat, outside the people who whispered, outside the person who needed you to be the problem. You realized something simple. If someone can know you for years, watch your character, watch how you move, watch how you treat people, and one accusation can erase all of that, you do not have a reputation problem. You have an audience problem. That is hard to admit because defending yourself can feel noble. Walking away can feel like surrender, especially when people are saying things you know are false. There is an itch in that, a physical itch. You want to correct the record. You want to pull one person aside, then another, then another. You imagine the perfect explanation, the screenshot, the timestamp, the sentence that would make everybody go quiet. But you discovered something. There is no perfect explanation for someone committed to misunderstanding you. They do not process information the way you think. Every defense becomes more material. If you explain too much, you are desperate. If you explain too little, you are hiding something. If you stay calm, you are cold. If you get angry, you are unstable. If you show receipts, you are obsessed. If you do not show receipts, you have none. That game has no winning move. So you stopped playing, and that is why their story got uglier after you went quiet. Because once you stopped supplying reactions, they had to supply more story. At first, the accusation was enough. Then time passed. You did not return. You did not beg. You did not send the paragraph. You did not recruit people. You did not publish anything. You did not retaliate. That should have made everything calmer. Instead, they kept talking. Interesting. You were gone, and the story still needed maintenance. That was the first crack. Someone noticed. Why are we still talking about them? Nobody had a good answer. Because if you were truly the chaos they described, your absence should have reduced the chaos. But somehow the conversation kept finding your name. That is when the shape of the story started changing. People began noticing who needed the story more. You did not, they did. You had gone back to your life. They kept returning to the case. That is dangerous for a false narrative. Not because silence proves innocence. It does not. Silence can mean many things, but prolonged silence removes distraction. Eventually, people stop watching your reaction and start watching the people telling the story. That is where things get uncomfortable. Because now the storyteller becomes visible. Their contradictions, their timing, their need to keep adding details, their strange habit of remembering new crimes whenever attention fades, their inability to let the subject die. You were no longer in the room to argue. So they had nobody left to blame for the tension. The tension stayed anyway. That is when someone finally asked the question nobody had asked at the beginning. What did they actually do? Not, what kind of person are they? Not, how did they make you feel? Not, what do we all think about them? What did they actually do? Specifics are brutal. Vague stories love atmosphere. Specifics require structure.
From the cloud. Let's not blow this out of proportion.
Dates, actions, words, consequences, and suddenly the story got thinner, not gone, thinner. A phrase became an incident became an interpretation became a pattern became a character judgment. That is how these things grow. Nobody notices the inflation while it is happening. Then somebody works backward and the whole thing starts looking strange. You knew that would happen. Not because you had some master plan. You were simply tired of explaining your own humanity to people who enjoyed the simpler version. So you let time do what your mouth could not. Time is patient. It does not interrupt. It does not get emotional. It does not send too many messages. It just keeps moving, and people reveal themselves inside it. That was your answer. You did not defend your name because you knew something they did not. A name does not need to be shouted back into truth every day. Character has memory. Patterns have memory. People eventually compare notes. Not everyone, but enough. That is why you were willing to be misunderstood for a season. You had stopped needing immediate vindication. That is one of the hardest things a person can stop needing. Immediate vindication. The urge to be cleared now, today, before dinner, before they sleep, before the group forms an opinion. You let the opinion form. That terrified them more than you knew. Because people expect resistance. Resistance gives them something to fight. Silence gave them nothing. They could throw accusations into the air, but there was no wall to bounce them back. So the words started falling. And when words fall, people hear the sound they make. That is when someone asked, if they were guilty, why didn't they try to control what everybody thought? Bad question. Guilty people can be silent too. Innocent people can panic too. Human behavior is messy, but the question opens something larger. Why did your behavior not match the story? They said you were manipulative. Yet you were not trying to manipulate anyone into staying. They said you needed control. Yet you walked away from the room where you had the least control over the narrative. They said you were obsessed with appearances. Yet you allowed people to think badly of you without launching a campaign. They said you were desperate for attention, yet you disappeared. Every claim created a contradiction, and the contradiction was not created by your defense. It was created by your absence. That was the irony. The less you said, the more their story had to explain. Soon the question was no longer, why didn't you defend yourself? It became, why did they need you to? That is where things turned. Because if you had defended yourself loudly, people could have called it a battle. Two sides, two stories, drama. But you did not give them a battle. You gave them an empty chair. And people started staring at the person arguing with it. That image changed everything. One person speaking, one person gone, one person adding details, one person living their life somewhere else, who looked obsessed now.
Yes, and if I don't pay up, I'll go to jail for tax evasion.
Who looked invested, who needed the audience. It was not the answer they expected. That is why they kept trying to provoke one. You probably noticed the little things, a message sent through someone else, a comment designed to travel, a vague post, A story told in a place they knew would reach you. Bait, not always conscious. People do not always sit there plotting. Sometimes they simply need the old dynamic restored. They need you to react so the story can return to its original shape. There you are, angry, defensive, explaining, perfect. Now they can say, "See, that is exactly what we meant, but you did not return to the role." That was the problem. You had retired from the character they wrote for you, and eventually, even the people who believed the original story had to update the file because the villain was not behaving like the villain. No revenge, no smear campaign, no dramatic comeback, no endless messages, no attempt to split the group, just distance. Distance is boring. Boring is powerful, because drama requires fuel. You stop delivering it. And in the quiet, another thing happened. People started remembering you before the story. That version. The one who showed up, the one who helped, the one who kept promises, the one who stayed too long. The one who forgave things nobody knew about. Memory came back online. That is dangerous for a narrative built during emotional heat, because time removes the soundtrack. Without the soundtrack, scenes look different. An argument that once looked like proof of your instability now looked like the 10th argument after 9 ignored warnings. Your withdrawal stopped looking cruel when people remembered how long you had tried. Your silence stopped looking manipulative when they realized you had spent months over-explaining. Your final exit stopped looking sudden when someone noticed all the smaller exits before it. Context. There it was again, the thing their story could not survive. Not because every accusation against you was false. You are not a saint. You said things badly. You had moments. You made mistakes. You got tired. You probably reacted in ways you would handle differently now. Good. That makes you human. The point was never that you were perfect. The point was that imperfection is not the same as the identity they built around it. You knew that, so you did not waste your life trying to become innocent enough for people who needed guilt. You let them have the story, for a while. That for a while mattered, because stories that are not true need constant protection. Truth can sit. Falsehood needs staff. It needs people repeating it, updating it, defending it, explaining inconsistencies, reminding everybody who the villain is. You had no interest in becoming an employee of your own accusation, so you stopped clocking in. That may have been the cleanest thing you ever did. You let them manage the narrative without your labor. And eventually, the workload exposed the company. That is when the answer came. Why didn't they defend their name? Someone finally understood. Because they knew defending it in here would not change anything. Silence. Then, they knew who we were going to believe. Worse, much worse. Because now your silence was not being read as fear, it was being read as judgment, not judgment in the dramatic sense. You were not standing above everyone. You had simply assessed the room, and your assessment was not flattering. You believed the room was not fair enough to deserve your defense. That realization makes people uncomfortable. Nobody likes discovering they were not trusted with the truth, especially when they thought they were the ones deciding whether you were trustworthy. The hierarchy flips. Suddenly they are not examining your character. Their character is being examined by your absence. Why did you think explaining yourself was pointless? What had they shown you? How often had they misunderstood you before? How quickly had they chosen convenience over complexity? How safe had that room actually been? Those questions make the original story expensive, because now everybody has to pay for their role in it. The one who started it, the one who repeated it, the one who stayed neutral while forwarding every message, the one who never asked you directly, the one who believed the worst version because it matched what they already wanted to think. Nobody looks clean under that light. That is why your answer made their story look worse. Not because you had some secret evidence, because the reason you stayed silent said something about them. You had learned that defending your name in the wrong room can become another form of begging. And you were done begging. Not for love, not for inclusion, not for basic fairness. If somebody needed a courtroom presentation to remember who you were, they had already forgotten too much, so you chose something harder. You allowed temporary misunderstanding in exchange for permanent distance. That trade looked terrible at first. It cost you people, access, belonging, comfort, maybe even parts of your own confidence. But it bought something you had never owned before. Freedom from explanation. That is expensive freedom. The first few weeks feel awful. You keep imagining what everybody thinks, then less, then less. Then one day, you realize somebody somewhere may still believe the story, and your breakfast tastes exactly the same. That is when the name comes back to you, not publicly, internally. Your name stops being a reputation and becomes yours again. You stop carrying it around like a glass object that strangers can crack. You realize people can misunderstand you and the world still turns. People can dislike you and your body survives. Somebody can tell a story, and you do not have to enter it. That changed the way you moved. You stopped introducing yourself to new people with invisible explanations. You stopped overperforming goodness because someone once called you bad. You stopped making every decision with a jury in your head. You became less defensive because there was less to defend. That is the part nobody expected. They thought silence would shrink you. It gave you your size back. And months later, when somebody asked why you never fought harder for your name, the answer was obvious. You had, for years, in smaller ways. By showing up, by keeping your word, by trying to repair, by explaining until you were exhausted, by giving people context, by staying longer than you should have. That was your defense. They just did not count it because it happened before the accusation. By the time the accusation arrived, you were finished presenting evidence, so you walked, and the story followed you for a little while. Then it got tired. Stories do that when the person they are about stops feeding them. The people who needed to believe it kept believing. The people capable of reconsidering started reconsidering. And you stopped waiting for either group. That was the final answer. You never defended your name because you had finally understood something nobody in that room could teach you. Your name was not on trial. Their access to you was. They failed it. That is why you left. That is why you stayed gone. And that is why, when the answer finally reached the room, nobody celebrated, nobody laughed, nobody said you had won. It was quieter than that. Someone just looked down. Someone else stopped talking, and the story they had repeated for months suddenly sounded different in their own mouths. Not because you came back to correct it, because you never did. And somehow, that was the correction.